Alatreon is a very divisive monster. It began its quest, if you will, in the 3rd generation, Monster Hunter Tri to be exact. It was the final in-game monster in that game, and in a game where there's only 18 monsters, you could guess that, it was fought quite a bit, and a lot of people came to grips with the monster there. I myself had to fight him a multitude of times, heck, upwards to almost 1,000 times, due in part to a certain thing I was trying to do, but nevertheless, the thing to worry about here, or to note from this rather, is the fact that if you're old in tooth, if you're an old veteran hunter from the 3rd generation at least, you know about this monster, you know essentially what it brings. You know that the only thing you really need this monster for is those horns. And that was the main thing. Back in the day, you really needed the horns to make the armor and the weapons. Now, the weapons was the biggest draw. The armor was kinda okay, but the weapons were some of the best weapons, if not the best weapons in the game. I remember to this day how you used to be able to bully basically any monster who was susceptible to dragon element with 4 of its lances. That monster was going nowhere except 6 feet under. Now, later on, they implemented him in 3 Ultimate, and they made the fight a little bit easier. Now, before, the fight was quite difficult because it was just hard to break those horns to get those parts. You had to do so many things, you had to jump through so many different hoops to get to them, whereas in 3U, they gave you at least a couple of new tools to do this with. Now, the most notable one being the binder. Every now and then your binder will be ready, you can shoot him, he'll fall to the ground, he'll flinch on the ground for a bit, and you can actually go on the horns and go ham. And that was easier. It made the fight much easier, because before, you didn't have these things. Heck, they even made a quest, I think it was called, Where Gods Fear to Tread, so that way you can actually get the horns a lot easier. Granted, you didn't have to break the horns yourself, you would just get a horn in the box, so a lot of people use this quest to get those horns. And that was the big thing. That was what made Alatreon so difficult. The fact that he himself was a super difficult fight, and to get what you needed from him, you have to do something quite particular. I mean, breaking parts of a monster is something that we always done. It's what we do. This is what we do as monster hunters. But to do it in this type of way, for a monster like this, and the hoops you have to go through just to do it, gave it that real challenging air. And I admit, that was one thing that was really cool about this monster. If you wanted to actually do everything you need to do, you had to seriously down this beast, figuratively and literally. So I can understand where some of the older players they think about that and like, yo, it was cool back then. And then later on in 4U and whatnot, when they introduced mounting and whatnot, it made the whole debacle not a debacle whatsoever, because the monster himself, Alatreon, didn't really change. He didn't change. They copy and paste my man right in, and they just made the hunters incredibly powerful, to the point where, broken, i.e. mounting was 100% broken. And then we even had charge blade back in the 4th generation that was exceedingly broken too. So all you needed was 2 insect glaive users and 2 charge blades. Those horns were flying off the first mount instantly, and I mean, the monster was essentially dead after that. Now fast forward, let's go all the way to the current day and time. This new Alatreon is interesting. Mind you, I totally get why people don't like it. It does have the judgment ability, the supernova ability, if you will, and it being a DPS check to actually make it to where you can even survive the attack itself is a bit but I still feel that they're not totally wrong. Capcom implementing this is not totally wrong, and essentially it's not the monster's fault. What happened? This game became a huge victim of power creep. Anyone who plays Pokemon knows exactly what I'm talking about. If you look at your Generation 1 Pokemon, let's get a good one. Golduck. Golduck is a very basic Pokemon. He's always been a very basic Pokemon. He was never super strong back in the original generation, but he never had any truly outstanding qualities. He was a water type Pokemon with middling stats, like right above 85-ish type stats. And if you look at him in the current day, he gets outclassed by literally everything that walks around on 2 feet, okay? It was a good Pokemon then, but when you bring it to how it is now with new abilities, new Pokemon in general with crazy attacks and whatnot, it just doesn't hold water, if you will, pardon the water Pokemon type pun. So that's what this game has been about. Every monster they've introduced has tried to one-up the other monster behind it, and if it was a monster from the previous generation, they had to do something with it to make it to where it was a viable monster for you to fight. Alatreon, here we go. It is a black dragon. We all know black dragons are the strongest, they're the cream of the crop, so they had to come out with something crazy and put it in the game so that way this monster wouldn't be ridiculous. I mean, If you don't believe me, look at Behemoth. When Behemoth first came in, he was the first monster to introduce, in my full-on opinion, power creep. Because, like, he was a monster who was like, okay, I'm tough, but I will kill you if you don't do this exact thing right, i.e. hide behind a comet when I drop the fat one on you. Okay, so after him, you had Supervillian who did the same thing. I will kill you if you don't hide behind a rock kind of thing, an instant kill move. Now, Alatreon was the same way, but they turned that up a little bit. How they did that was, if you don't hit me enough, I'm going to kill you, period. And that's how power creep works. They had to find one way to one-up each other, like, over and over again. And the power creep from Behemoth to Supervillian was, Behemoth, I will drop 3 rocks, just don't break these rocks, and you're good. Supervillian was like, if you don't do enough damage, I'm not going to have any rocks for you to drop with you. Now, granted, you didn't have to do incredible high amounts of damage. You had to do just damage in general. It was a slight DPS check in certain cases. Not as tough as the Alatreon, where it's an elemental DPS check, where before it was just hit him, do the damage. Now it's like, hit me with this particular type of damage, and we're good. Now, the current community is split. Okay, I get it. The current community is split between why there should be an elemental DPS check and why there shouldn't be one. Some people even open a petition that you can sign so that Capcom can change it to where the elemental DPS check isn't needed. But due to how Capcom made its bed, I feel as if this is how it has to be. And if you're really serious with it, it's not that big of a deal. It just requires you to be a little different. Yes, you can't just go in and smack a monster till it dies. I mean, we've literally been doing this. Some of us have been doing this since the very beginning. Hit the thing until it stops moving, and that's essentially it. Now we have to add a little bit of extra strategy into it, adding some MMO type mechanics into the game, if you will. Behemoth was the first one to start doing this, the progenitor, if you will. And I totally get why people don't like it. They feel uncomfortable. It takes them out of their comfort zone. And that's cool, because Monster Hunter is all about adapting. You have to actually move out of your comfort zone to do certain things. Now, granted, you didn't have to do this in extreme nature as to what Alatreon was actually giving us, but sometimes you just have to change for the better. Because if you don't, then the game itself will be stagnant. Because think about it like this. Think about it. On paper, put any monster down on paper, and if someone said, how do you kill this monster? You'll basically just say, hit it until it dies. Don't deviate from that whatsoever. There was no real strategies, nothing you really had to do. There was nothing that changed anything. There was no asterisks, if you will. It was just that. If you took a Rathalos, put it in front of me, what do? You hit it until it dies. If you put a Narcocuga in front of me, you hit it till it dies. Rajang, hit it till it dies, so on and so forth. It wasn't until later where it's like, you can hit it, but you have to check yourself. Because if you don't check yourself, you're going to wreck yourself. People don't like that thinking. They don't like that train of thought. They don't like the fact that you have to do other than what was supposed to be done, or that usually is done for time and time and time again. But you have to understand, if we don't change as hunters in the way in which we fight monsters, then this game is going to get stagnant again. The biggest issue with Monster Hunter is the fact that the old way of Monster Hunter was cool, but it needed to evolve. It literally was the same game with slight tweaks since the 2nd generation, okay? The last true evolution was, I want to say, I'm gonna be real, it was underwater combat, okay? Because it was a big thing, but it was also a small thing. And then you had the mounting. So you had underwater combat that showed up for 1 generation and died again. Then you had the mounting. Outside of if you were to take the mounting away and take underwater combat away, that is Monster Hunter 2, right? So there's not a whole lot of evolution going on here. So they're trying to do other things. They're trying to make the monsters more powerful, evolving the monsters, if you will, instead of evolving the hunters. Because the hunters ourselves, we are very strong. The monsters aren't getting stronger. They're trying to find ways to make the monster stronger without making it too lame. Artificial difficulty is terrible. Look at Apex monsters, look at Hyper monsters, look at tempered monsters. That's boring, that's lame, that's whack. But to give a monster an introduction to where it's like, look, I am nice, and there's a whole lot of cool things about me that you have to actually take heed, or you're gonna get smacked, I like that. That's how you do it. That's how you make a monster difficult. That's how you give power back to the monsters. That's how you implement newer mechanics so that way the game itself can evolve in the future. Now, at the end of the day, I'm going to say this. Alatreon is the supervillain. This is a supervillain. The Alatreon is a supervillain. This is his battle. We have put him in this position to where we are signing petitions to change him to make him easier. We put him in this position where we don't like anything that's about him that makes it harder for us to actually do any real fighting. If it's not smack the monster till it dies, not check ourselves before I wreck ourselves, we don't like that. But my man is essentially the scapegoat for this. Like, it has been built up upon a couple of the monsters, but I think right here is where people have really had it. But that fits the bill. Alatreon is the supervillain. It is the supervillain for the Monster Hunter franchise because he doesn't care about you, he doesn't care about himself, he doesn't care about anything. Every and anything must die, including him maybe. He doesn't care, he doesn't know. He's elementally unstable. He doesn't care. This is how this monster is depicted. He is a black dragon that doesn't care about anything. Fatalis cares about self-preservation and really hates the hunters because of what they did way long ago, and that's cool and I get that, but Alatreon doesn't care about none of that. He is what a supervillain would be depicted as. Someone who is incredibly powerful, that cares about no one, has no regard for any life or anything like that, just wants to see the world burn. That's why he is a supervillain. All this adds to his stature. All of this right here adds to his stature. So look at it like this. Alatreon is the supervillain of the Monster Hunter franchise, and truth be told, they shouldn't change a single thing about him. And for the first time since his inception, I am behind him. I stand firm with Alatreon as to how he is right now. All the things they added, all the BS, all the madness, I want that. I want to keep that in the game because if not, we are all going to devolve into just lame hunters.